Okay, members, just gone 4 o'clock. I'd like to welcome you to this month's Environment Regeneration meeting, and I'd ask Karen just to read out the notice and summons of meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair. And through you to all members of Environment and Regeneration Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the committee to be held in the Guildhall and socially hybrid distanced on the 11th of May at 4 p.m. And I'll take the roll call. Alderman Morris Devaney.
Here, Karen.
Thank you. Alderman Derek Hussey.
Aye, online, Karen.
Thank you. Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Alderman Kerrigan, are you here? Okay. Alderman David Ramsey. Alderman Ramsey, are you here? Okay. Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Boyle, are you here? Councillor Angela Dobbins.
Yes, Karen, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Edwards.
Here online, Karen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rachel Ferguson.
Here, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
And Shaw, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kelly.
Shaw, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Emma McGinley.
And Shaw, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Rory McHugh.
Sure.
Here. Councillor Maeve O'Neill. Councillor O'Neill.
Here,
you
Karen.
on?
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. And Councillor Brian Tierney. Okay, well, I'll just go back. Do we have Alderman Kerrigan?
Here, Karen.
Thank you. Alderman Ramsey?
Karen, Alderman Ramsey will be on later on.
Okay, no problem. Councillor Boyle? Okay, well, members, if they can put on the chat box if they join us in the next little while. So, Chair, would you want me to do the broadcasting statement?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone present at the meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at the meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of the images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purposes of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. And a copy of the Council's privacy notice can be found on the Council website. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Karen. And that brings us to our next item, which is declarations of members' interests. Any member who wishes to declare, they can do so now or put it in the chat box as we proceed through the meeting. Item 5, members, is our presentation today. And I see we have Harry Gallagher online. Don't know if Martin Curran is joining us or not, but you're very welcome, Harry. And of course, the purpose of the presentation is to discuss the street lighting report. So members, I would ask members as well just to be mindful, please keep your comments and questions to the actual report and not on individual constituency issues. So, Harry, if you'd like to proceed, the floor is yours.
Martin Curran has appeared in the corner of my screen, but I thought he was going to leave me to do the presentation.
Harry, we can't really hear you. You're very faint.
Right, let me try this. I do have a microphone here. Is that any better, Karen?
Yes, that's better. Thank you, Harry.
Maybe a loose wire and something. But to say, Martin's here and he'll actually do the presentation itself. But just at the outset, let me say that Street lighting is one of the very well received things that we do, but I know that there's some aspects of it that undoubtedly are a concern to members, and we do appreciate the work that you put in for us, because I know so many people report faults online, and that really is a big part of helping us get the work done to help serve the public out there. But Martin will go through this presentation, highlight some of the areas that we think are probably in your concerns, and we'll be very pleased to take questions following on from that. So I'll pass you over to Martin now. Hopefully he can run his way through the presentation.
Thank you, Harry. Yeah, I'm the lighting engineer for the division, as Harry has outlined. You're probably aware anyway, the division has 3 council areas, 2 others along with yourselves, Swet, Mid, Ulster and Fermanagh and Omagh. And if we move on to the next slide. The 3 areas that you wanted covered that I gathered were maintenance policy and LEDs. Move on to the next slide, please. And the maintenance, a bit of the background, you have the division has 67,000 lights, and your council area has 29,500. So you have nearly 50% of our street lighting stock. If I mention an area or a time, 2013, 2014, even maybe 2012, things were very tight back then. Budgets were tight, and energy costs were rising, and you know, there was a lot of focus on how can we save energy. Some of our authorities across the water were having to turn lights off. We had been very proactive. We'd been running a scouting system with follow-up repairs, and it was deemed then that the scouting was costing an awful lot of money, so it was stopped in 2015, April of 2015, and we started then to develop our online fault reporting system. And some of you will be familiar with that now. The links on the screen there is www.nidirect.gov.uk. There's the call centre where you can report the outages, 0300 200 7899. That's a central call number. That'll even do for reporting your DFA call number, for reporting your pothole or whatever else. Give you a quick rundown on the timescales of our response time to the various reports. You've got single outages. We would attend to those in 7 days or a 5 working day turnaround. Group outages, 24-hour visit, attend to, and at that stage the operative should be fit to get most of the lights back on. All our systems are circuited, so I mean the faulty circuit may have to be left out, but the majority of the lights should be fit to be reinstated. If you have a damaged column, that's treated as an emergency, as would a door off a column or a hanging light or bracket, and that will be dealt with within an hour and a half of being reported. The column itself obviously won't be replaced at that stage. It'll be made safe, and follow-up repairs then will take place within a few weeks of that. Back there to the group outage, follow-up repairs on the outages should be within a few days. Painting on the list there, we really don't do structural painting. Painting's just more cosmetic, public realm schemes and that sort of thing. Maybe if those graffiti on columns would be tidied up with overpainting. Routine inspection and testing of our network, that's a compulsory, that's a legal obligation on us. Our IET regulations, BF 7671, demand that all electrical systems are inspected and tested on at a minimum once every 6 years. So we have a 6-yearly routine maintenance and inspection system within the department. Next slide, please. So we're on now to policy. I think the element you are really concerned in here is where we remove lights and why we remove lights, but I'll just give you a wee general fill-in the policy. It's our policy is EO or SPPG EO 72. It covers maintenance and the provision of new street lighting, and really one of the top things that we've mentioned there is no lighting until the existing network is fully upgraded. This has been in play again from that era of 2012, back whenever things were getting very tight and we weren't getting good budgets to upgrade our network. We were having a very poor budget to repair our street lights, and the question was being asked, why are we putting in new lighting? Or in other words, why are we extending our lighted network? So at that stage, the decision was taken, we'd provide no more new lighting onto our network. Was fully up to standards. So that's where that's coming from. Just to give you a wee idea in areas where we do provide lighting, urban area would be deemed within the 30 mile an hour, and all adopted roads and footpaths within that area would have lighting provision, with exceptions of rear footpaths. And one other exception would be on the extremities of a wee village, or that where maybe the speed limits are well beyond the development. The lighting wouldn't extend beyond the development, go right out to the speed limits. Semi-urban, very similar. That's within the 40 mile, and again a very similar coverage to the urban. The only exception there would be maybe where the lighting would extend beyond the 40 mph, or the development would extend beyond the 40s. We would take the lighting across in conjunction with that, which leaves rural lighting, anything outside the 40 mile per hour. And rural roads will generally not be illuminated. That's the top line on our policy. So you're starting off from a point where they generally will not be illuminated. Are there exceptions? Of course there are exceptions, and there are two main exceptions that comes to mind. And if you that corresponds from there, probably sick looking at these, where we sort of say that unless there's a reasonable development density, or where it may contribute to a reduction in after dark collisions. May, the emphasis is on may, because it'll only come into play there after any other traffic management systems have failed. And I'm talking in terms of road markings or signage. Only then may lighting be considered. Right? How do we define a development density? What's a normal development density? Well, we chat about the 10 house rule in the department. So it's 10 houses, all having direct access onto the carriageway and within a 200 metre gap on the 200 metres road stretch. For instance, if you have 6 houses and you have a lane going up from the middle of that with 4 houses up it, well, if you're 10 houses within 200 metres, that wouldn't qualify, because the lane would only count as 1. The other 3 houses don't have a direct access. If you had the situation where you had 8 houses and you had a wee shop, nighttime shop, where people could get their milk, their pint of milk, their cigarettes, their loaf, the wee rider that we have is any public buildings that have high nighttime usage, they would qualify for a weighting of 2. So yes, that would qualify. You would have your 10 house, that would meet your 10 house rule. The only other one then on that list that I haven't covered there, private streets. Private streets construction amendment regulations came in on the 1st of May 2001, and that just put the onus back on the developer to provide lighting. So he has to carry out get his own lighting design completed to our standards, to our approval, build the site then, or install the lighting to meet that approved design, and then ask us to adopt it over. Now, once he has it in and up and operational, he can ask us to adopt it over to do a temporary adoption. We would take it over at that stage, providing we've it snagged and all, it's all completely up to standard, we have full test certificates and all the rest. And we would take it on for energy and minor maintenance. Minor maintenance won't extend much beyond, say, replacement of fuses, because the ownership still remains with the developer. If columns were damaged, cable faults, any other lantern failure even, that would go back to the developer to reinstate those. Next slide, please. Run now to the removal of streetlights. I know this is where your focus are, and I'm conscious of time. I'm probably slipping on time here, so we'll fly through this very quickly. Just if the original justification is no longer there, no longer meets policy, obviously lighting will not be retained. And this arises a lot with new private developments. You know, when we're now sort of developments that had, say, for instance, the rear footpath lighting, which was provided many years ago. It's been in our policy, believe it or not, for about 30 years that we would not provide rear lighting, rear footpath lighting. But we're only starting to get to the stage now where we're renewing those older estates that did have it. So that's what has brought it to the fore. But the road reverts to private ownership, speaks for itself. It goes back over to private ownership. Any lighting that we all removed, disconnected, removed. Realignment. If we get to the next slide, please. Example here is outside your area. It's Deer Park Road will be down in Balahi. But it's just an example of where the road was realigned. The road there is the white bit, and you can see it's been pulled out from the boundary of the green and the white. That was the edge of the road. the green lines are the overhead NAE overhead lines, and the two wee black dots are wood poles. There were streetlights on those wood poles. They were removed as part of this project simply because that area doesn't meet the policy, doesn't meet our 10-house rule. And I know it chatted about realignment. I don't know why the lights were there historically, because I can't see any reason. There's no reason on the road. There's no bend or any other reason for them being there. Next slide, please. This is another wee example of where a column had become corroded. The maintenance man went to repair this light on the wee back path there, the back of the block, centre year drawn. Fortunately, it's not highlighted. He discovered there was holes at ground level, probably where the dogs piddle, and he reported that back. So the column had to be taken down from a health and safety point of view, and because it didn't meet policy, it was on a back path, wasn't replaced. Next slide, please. Sandbank Colleges. This one will be familiar to some of you, no doubt. NAE were renewing their services to Sandbank Colleges. The existing services were overheads on NAE poles. There were lights there, and I'm told by the residents the lights were there for probably the best part of 50 years. But what came against Sandbank Colleges, NAE gave us plenty of notice that they were going to be doing this, but we could do nothing because Sandbank Colleges is not adopted. We only provide lighting in adopted areas. So while they had lighting for the best part of 50 years, it was unadopted. We couldn't replace that lighting. Next slide, please. Another estate that we were renewing the lighting on, and we discovered this wee cul-de-sac, wee horseshoe that's to the middle of your drawing there as well, with no lighting on it. That did have lighting. We had a column collapsed here, the L5, the old L5, not top main road there somewhere. It collapsed, and of course the rest of the columns were all of the same ilk, so we had to do a very speedy replacement program, and as part of that we discovered that the cul-de-sac, as I call it, or horseshoe, wasn't adopted. Now there's negotiations going on with the residents and our own roads people regarding adoption of this, and what we've said since there's been lighting there in the past, we would certainly work with whoever's putting in that lighting, and it may well be some of our own contractors. We'll cover the cost of reinstating the lighting, but not before adoption or pre-adoption work is completed. Next slide, please. Another big estate where lighting was renewed, and this has only been commissioned there in the past couple of weeks. Primity Park and Crescent, the new buildings. The drawing's very wee and it's very hard to see, but it's an executive estate that in the era when there was a lot of rear footpaths, bin alleys, that type of thing. And as I say again, whenever we do the renewal program, it's within policy, and policy doesn't account for reinstating lights on back footpaths, so the lights had to be removed. And I think I counted 15 lights that came out of this estate, and there were only 30 odd new, and so quite a hit. It's just it's the luck of the draw, isn't it? Next slide, please. Another place where we can remove lights where there's excessive or repeated vandalism. This example is Colin Lane. Now, this is an example we've adopted over from our northern colleagues. We took over Derry City, came over into Western Division in 2014. Our predecessors, I think around about 2012, had to disconnect the lights in this area. They had continuous vandalism, cable theft, and on the grounds of health and safety, they disconnected the entire network. I've had many requests over the past number of years to reinstate these. We've discussed even doing trials on it. Nothing has materialised. The 60 odd lights on it. So it runs from Racecourse Road away over to Glengallia and Templemore, around the back of Cairn Hill. Would take over 200,000 to replace all those lights, and really it does need a whole replacement scheme. So I've said to some of yourselves and some of the colleagues that the only way we can really do this, 200,000 is too big an element of my budget to go into renew. If we could get maybe like a DFC to fund renewal of it, we would certainly pick up the pieces and take it from there and give it another go. And let's hope the vandals of 2012, 13, whatever it was, are long growing up and nobody has filled their shoes. Next slide, please. We're on to LEDs. I said I'm very conscious of time, so I'll need to start speaking faster even. Light emitting diodes, you're all fairly familiar with these. they're, I suppose, to say the worldwide standard now. Why did we go down the road of making them our standard? There's two reasons there. There's probably three, and that they're really the only show in town. We hadn't many other options to choose from, really. Anyway, the main reasons were energy and maintenance savings. The energy savings are very good. I mean, depending on what wattage you're changing out, you could be saving anything from 40 to 60%. And the maintenance savings are phenomenal, because yes, we've had a very, very, very low failure rate on what we've been changing up to date, but they've been very, very low, very good. And we've been told now that LEDs are good for 100,000 hours. Now, in our burning from dusk to dawn, that equates to about 25 years. The lanterns we're buying in at the minute on contract are of a 10-year warranty. We would hope they'll do a lot longer than that. As I say, obviously these are all extrapolated from laboratory tests, but let's hope that they're good. They should be fairly close. They're a white light source. There's been a lot of work done to say that the AC is better with white light. You can reduce the levels. Our standards, again, were reduced to way back in 2013 to allow us to use white light. You could use it at a lower standard. So that's one of the benefits. There's a few other benefits as well. I suppose the vision, you have a lot clearer vision, better color rendition. And so then we moved into, sorry, I'll just jump there. Various color temperatures, the common various color temperatures, there's 3000 K, 3000 degrees Kelvin would be a yellowish colored light. Getting back 2700 would be sort of the old gas light, that yellowy tinge. Natural white's 4000 K, and 5000 and above is known as cool white. The department have standardized in the 4000, sort of the neutral white. And alleged health implications, yes, we've had those. We can't deny that. We've had many allegations, but those have all been dispelled. I think Public Health England made a summary statement that anything that was below 4200 degrees K would be negligible impact on humans, and I think that's right. Put me focus. We've had many talks over the years on LEDs as they've been developing, and one statement that one of the presenters made stuck with me, and I've used it probably in correspondence to some years, and that was that your LED, your mobile phone has a far greater emission level than any LED fitting. So I think that puts it all into perspective. I'll just go back then to the retrofitting program. There was a pilot scheme in our neighbouring Southern Division. They had a pilot. They'd done about 5,000 lanterns back in 2016, started 2016, and that was deemed to be very successful. So based on that, the department decided to go down the road of a full retrofit program. So our funding started in 2017, and it's been increased over the years. I think this year is in the region of 900,000 K, 900K that we had for it. So, you know, we're moving, we're making strides. We're about 50% through. When we started out, we thought it would take 10, 12 years to change it out. We're 5 years in, and we're 50% there. So long may it last. Next slide, please. Just an example, that was Woodburn Park, a photograph that was taken before we changed it out. I think the new columns here on the left. You can just see, you can see the lantern itself, there's light going everywhere from it. And if you look at the definitions, you know, you get that yellowish tinge. It's not maybe as clear cut as the next slide, please. See then the after effects when the new LED lighting scheme has been put in. Maybe it doesn't demonstrate the lack of scale as clear as I would like, but in reality, I think the camera maybe deceives a wee bit. There's very good light control. As I say, the optical control on them's perfect. They put the light where it's meant to be, on the road and on the footpath, and not in the sky or somebody's living room. Now, the downside in that is people maintain and they lose light, and that's right. They don't have the same backlight. Maybe can't see now to put the key in their door, or can't see their front step. But all we can say is that the light they had in the past was incidental, spill light. And yes, if they enjoyed that or benefit from it, very good. But we have no obligation to restore that lighting. Next slide, please. That's me. Thank you all. And sorry for having to put up with me for me coming late and all the rest. But if there's any questions, I'll try and answer them. And I'm conscious that you are very tight for time, and I've probably well overrun it.
Okay, thanks for that to Harry and to Martin there for the presentation. Members, it's over to yourselves. I have a number of councillors indicated here. First on the list is Councillor Ferguson. Go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Harry and Martin. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through those details with us. Obviously, a number of us councillors have raised a few different areas, especially when it comes to the removal of lights and, say, back lanes. For one, from my area would be St. Canice's Park, a very old elderly district, and now it's caused a lot of fear. I know whenever I've had a response, it's been down to policy, but Martin, you said yourself there was a number of lampposts put in that possibly were inside of that policy that necessarily weren't supposed to be there. I'm just wondering if you would know of a way in which someone has said it's been challenged before, but I would be very keen with the new minister, whoever it will be, to look at challenging this on the grounds of safety. Just because these back lanes, they are dark, they are slippery, you know, usually predominantly areas that are well settled with families and pensioners, and this back lane in particular is for bringing bins out. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. My other question is unadopted estates. At this moment in time, we have a number of developers, I think around about 3, who have been sitting with their unadopted estates, building houses, adding on for the last 10 years. My problem I see envisaged for years to come, I know you're saying that they're responsible for the lamp posts, is a lot of them are the old style, where I know you as a department were struggling to get replacements for, and I'm seeing that in these sites, that even the developers are struggling to get them replaced, the old style, not the LED style. If it comes to them applying to be adopted, will it be the department asking them to change over to the LED so that it isn't that, you know, whole rush for you to have to get them changed over whenever they do become adopted? And I'm thinking in particular of 2 unadopted estates that are probably sitting for the last 15 years, you know, still getting added on and not being adopted yet. So I really do appreciate you taking the time, but my main concern is like you say, the removal of lampposts in areas that have been there for many, many years. But thank you. Appreciate any answers.
Okay, Rachel. Yeah, 2 very valid questions. Unfortunately, say we're tied with policy, and you know we just can't put lighting back into the rear footpaths again. St. Canice's Park, I know that has been raised with us at the time when the new lighting went in there. All I've been fit to do is say to people, you know, maybe if they could get their own electrician, maybe just to put in like a sensor, an LED sensor light, just for the people's own use, for their safe movement. And sometimes they feel too that they've lost that wee bit of security with having lost the rear lighting, you know. Hard to argue with that, I suppose. That's really all that I can advise. Certainly there's no way that we can breach the policy and go back again. I take your point. Yeah, it's something that can be raised with the new minister. It's been raised with a few of the ministers over the years, but nothing has changed there. It has held very firm. So I don't anticipate you having any movement there, but by all means, ask the question. Unadopted sites, yeah, that's another interesting one. All I could say to you there is my interpretation of that would be if these sites were approved for the sodium lanterns, say, which probably they were, if that's been the case, well then I don't think we can really go back to the developer and say, no, we're not taking them over now until you provide LED lighting. Although I know there's a clause that after a period of time, and you are chatting there about 15 years maybe on some of the sites, we probably would have, you know, we probably could come back and say to them in that case, but I'm thinking just if they had it approved for the other lanterns within a reasonable time scale, I don't think it would be right for us to insist on them having to change them back to LEDs. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Edwards.
Chair, thanks for letting me. I want to thank Martin and Harry for their presentation. And like Councillor Ferguson before me, I do share
the concerns around back lanes, the department's policy, especially in rural built up developments. And I do think that light does act as a crime preventative, but hopefully can be, as stated, resolved in Stormont. I just wanted to pick up there on, I think it was mentioned about streetlights and public amenities. And as Harry will be aware, there's a section of road in Clady that's leading to Unadopted Chapel, which I would deem a public amenity. It's lit the entire way on the Donegal side, but it stops in Clady on the way to the chapel at the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. I'm just wondering what their opinion there would be on having that chapel as a public amenity, although albeit cross-border. And another issue I want to raise, Chair, is and this is not to be critical at all, but I've experienced cases where I've reported streetlights through the online system, and they were closed before they were resolved without any update. In one particular case, it was closed 4 times before it was finally resolved. So I'm just wondering why those cases are closed before they're actually resolved. And just a final point as well, Chair. I do think, I know that there is a track, you can track the incident online, but is there any way that you can get an automatic reply when the street light is actually fixed? I know we get it when you report it, but it would be a great, especially for myself as councillor, imagine others on the call, if you could get an automatic reply once the street light is actually fixed, and then you can go back to your constituents and, you know, they're saying it's fixed here, hopefully it is, come back to me if it's not. But those are the 3 issues I wanted to raise there, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I come back then, Councillor Edwards, on that? Yeah, I'll take the last one first. I'm omitted in my presentation there. We've just had a new app installed on the system there. It came into play on start of February. Up until that, we were a bit archaic. We were still working with job cards, which were issued to the contractor. Had it then come back and be cleared, so any of you that were familiar with putting lights on the system would have seen the symbol sitting red for a long period of time. So now things should be fairly instant, because that should change at the point where the light's repaired. The experience you've had with having it sort of clearing 3-4 times before it was actually repaired, I just don't know. I'll certainly have to investigate that one. But to have a notification at the point where it's repaired, I don't think that should be a big issue. In fact, I thought that should probably be happening at the minute, but obviously it's not. So certainly we'll investigate that with our software people to see if that can be brought on board. And the Dunny one, well, Harry'd probably be more familiar than me, but I'm reasonably familiar. It's been going on for a number of years. And again, it's the rural road that you heard me talking about there earlier. There's not the level of development on it. From you go out past the smugglers, really, there's no development then to the border, or virtually none. So that has always been the problem with getting that on board, getting that stretch lit. That's it.
Okay, our next councillor is Councillor Jackson.
Good Chair, and thanks to Harry and Martin for the report. And I suppose I would unfortunately would say that I've had similar experience to Councillor Edwards, where we have had numerous we've had to report numerous outages before they're fixed. They seem to be closed off the system before they're actually fixed. So it is something that it wasn't an isolated incident. That does happen. But that being said, the online reporting system generally works very well, and it's something that maybe not this time of the year, but coming into the autumn and winter months, we get contacted about quite often. And we did experience some delays in getting the action taken on some of the outages in the last year or so. And that being said, I fully appreciate the pressures that have been on every department, particularly due to the pandemic and ours. But it's something, the online system is something that we would use very regularly, and by and large it works. So in that sense, DFI are to be congratulated on it. But just and at the risk of sounding repetitive, the issue around backlighting and back lanes continues to be a problem, and it's been raised at this committee numerous times. I know I've made I have a correspondence with DFI about numerous back lanes around the council area. But Martin, whenever you were doing the presentation, you alluded to policy, and particularly around new developments and the private streets arrangements. There's also a policy around creating places. That it's a DFA policy that ensures any new developments are up to standard. They're well designed, and they're designed in such a way to deter crime. And they make people feel safe. And it's great and it's reassuring that when new developments are being constructed, they're done to a high quality. And organizations and statutory organizations such as yourselves have that oversight around the quality and the design of any developments. But what we've seen with the removal of lighting columns at back lanes, back squares, it creates a reduction of standards, and it flies in the face of the EFI's current policy around creating spaces. It actually creates opportunities for crime. It makes people feel unsafe, and that's something that I find it very hard they measure up around. Whenever we hear that there's policy reasons why these columns are being removed, but in the same token, there's policy reasons that ensure that any developments in communities have to be safe. And on that note, I think it's important that we put on the record that we should congratulate our own council, because through the PCSP, our council are actually providing that support and filling in the gaps where that have been left by the EFI. They provide that reassurance, and they particularly more vulnerable residents, where council are coming out, carrying out home safety visits and installing security lights in people's property. But that shouldn't be the case. There's an expectation that DFA will not allow a reduction in standards, will not allow almost a two-tier approach around development within our city and district, because that's what's being created when these columns are being removed. And at the very least, what we have been requesting is that there be some sort of a community consultation before these columns are removed, and people are made to feel more vulnerable as a result of their removal. So I think, I know the comments have been well rehearsed over numerous meetings, but I think it's important that these are in the meeting today, that that again that they're re-aired, for want of a better word. But thank you, Chair.
Yep. I'll come back in there again. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Yes, we'll certainly look into that. Say it seems to have risen a couple of times. Lights been closed off before they're repaired. Something we're going to have to just look into. And say again, the back path lighting, there's no point in me sort of regurgitating old material there. It's a policy decision. We have to stick with the policy. And as you say, as Councillor Rachel had described there, maybe it's something that could be taken up again with the new minister. Okay.
Sorry, Martin, I might just come in here just on the online reporting of things. I think it's one of, like we've all found since we first went to that online reporting of faults, time has moved on, and I find, if I have any parcels getting delivered, you know, they send you messages saying, we'll be here, and they update you, you know, whenever you're supposed to get it. And that's just typical of the type of service that we all start to expect now. And I think our online reporting system is a bit stuck in the past whenever we first went there. So I have raised it at higher levels, and there will be attempts to try to get the software, the IT people to upgrade that, you know, to try to mean that there is communication with people. But it all takes time with these IT things. But the reporting of that whenever the fix has been carried out happening on the ground now, rather than our more traditional method where we then sent in a card to confirm it was, and then it was marked off on the system. It should be more responsive system now, so it should be there. And I hear what everybody's saying about the removal of the lights in the rear alleyways. I think it's probably the most unpopular thing that we do in the world of street lighting. But it is the policy, and the policy has been around for quite a number of years and was revised and updated, you know, as recently as 2015, I think, you know, which is long after Creating Places was published. So it was all out there, but we get the message, you know. Thank you.
Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Harry and Martin. I think all of the points have been addressed, or most of them have been addressed. The issue of report back, single lights out 7 days. I'd love to see it more often being 7 days within the rural area, because like others, my own experience at times has been you need to report and report and report, particularly single outages in rural areas. With regard to painting, I understand what you're saying about there isn't a policy of painting, but there are areas where non-standard lighting goes in for various reasons, and squares, and I've noticed some of them down the city, that they are non-standard lighting. Is the painting scenario there, well, maybe it's a blank painted column. I'm aware of columns of that nature in Castleberg. Is there a policy that those would not be repainted, or would it be somebody else's responsibility? With regard to the lux reduction, I very much welcome the explanation of that, because I've actually had electricians complaining to me that the light has been reduced in their area. But when you understand that the responsibility of the department is to light the pathway and the road, and not to provide flood lighting for somebody to have a barbecue in the front garden or whatever, that's understandable. Mention was made there of adoption on a temporary basis. How temporary is temporary before the department would do a full adoption of a lighting scheme, or does that come with the overall estate adoption? With regard to rural provision, hazard provision, can that be provided at junctions which are regarded as locally hazardous, where there may not be, in fact, dwellings? And the lighting is more or less an indication that, you know, there is a junction here, just be aware of it. And like others, the whole issue of removal, not new provision, but removal without consultation for many electors that would contact myself. By the way, they're not constituents members, they are electors. We're not MLAs or MPs. Many electors would come to me with, you know, they do have these concerns about removal. And Councillor Jackson has referred to PCSP there, and it's an excellent suggestion. So in future, I suppose in hindsight, it's very well to do things in hindsight, but in future, when there is the potential of removal, is there the potential that the department will liaise with the PCSP, and PCSP do provide security lighting, etc., where it's needed for senior citizens, etc., and where there's fear? So perhaps liaison prior to the removal of lighting, both with residents and with PCSP, as to whether they can actually provide alternative. You know, It's the old story. We all see the black spot on the page, and there's a big white section out there, which is good. And I do congratulate the department on the work that they do in street lighting, but there still are those minority of issues that cause concern to many. Thank you for your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hussey. I'll try and address some of those. Yeah, I take your point about the 7 days. We would like to think that will be happening on the ground. To say now that this new app should help things and should bring things more into perspective, more up and keeping with, as Harry was explaining there, your delivery from your post or whatever. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what's happening. We should be getting the response and say we're actually, we have a 70% compliant target, and we're meeting that. So maybe that's been built up because of what's been done in the city and not in the rural areas. So yeah, we'll have to keep a wee eye on that. Painting, yeah, well, painting, as I said there, mentioned public realm, but you chatted about the square. Anywhere that, you know, that would be a town centre, that would be, that's where we would do the decorative painting. You chatted there about columns and that, so that, yeah, you could take it that we would do that wee bit of painting in round town centres and that cosmetic painting, as I would call it. The temporary adoption, well, the temporary adoption can be as long as it takes. Once the lighting's up to standard and we've accepted it over, it can sit then for as long as the developer takes to complete the site. We'd be picking up the energy and doing the minor maintenance, and say anything major would be passed back to him for repair. The hazard situation, lighting for a hazard, as I say, the emphasis there was on may be considered. So a hazard on the road would be a traffic management function. They would look at it from, as I say, from signage and white lining or whatever. And failure of that, they may consider lighting. But I would imagine if it's a rural, unlit area, the likelihood of it, and maybe undeveloped, being provided there would be very, very slim. That's my interpretation of it. And then you talked about, yes, the alternative of contacting PSP liaison. Well, it's certainly a new one on us, and something that I'm sure we can consider. Yeah, by all means, anything that will help, not to be rejected. Thanks for your suggestion.
And again, Martin, I'll just chip in there just with a couple of wee comments of mine. You know, just about the lighting at the rural junctions, and just reminded me, you know, that the rural junctions on dual carriageways, I think, are street lighting is provided on them. And it's funny, sometimes we think of rural areas as meaning, you know, on very minor roads, but I think on dual carriageways, you know, like on the A4, the junctions on it are lit, or any roundabouts, I think, are lit as well. So again, they're in rural areas, but there is street lighting on them. But I know that's very often when we talk about rural, we mean, you know, something else rather than that. And I think that, you know, you're saying about the removal of the street lighting, just I know it's a theme that we keep coming up on. The suggestion to contact PCSP, I would have no problem with that. Martin and I know that anytime it comes to the removal of any street lighting, we debate long and hard before we do that, looking for any misinterpretations of policy. It really is something we only do when we feel we have no other option, and it wouldn't be hard for us to discuss with PCSP at that time what we're planning to do and let them know. So I think that's something that we can build into our local procedures, Martin, just between us, you know. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. And our next councillor is Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. And I do thank Martin and Harry for their comments so far and the report. Just on that, as I say, I know I went through my own DEA, and I got, well, I suppose that was back maybe last year, 2 years ago there, and I got 190 lights out. But as I say, DFI, to be fair, I see you're kind of getting tarnished here a wee bit, because there are those developers and there's those sites whereby lights are out and they're not under DFI's control. And I do sympathise with you on that one. I mean, I'm looking there at, you know, various estates. I mean, I'm thinking of there's an estate, Ashley Court in Castledare as an estate, whereby the majority of that that has been adopted, but there's still a section of it which has not been adopted. And therefore there's lights on that which aren't on the DFI because that has not been totally completed. There's lights on that are not under DFI control. So as I say, that's one example I'm just giving. But as I say, there's those issues there, and there's various other ones whereby you go to report them. I mean, I've had lights there just fixed that I initially reported on September 19, but as it fell out, they weren't DFI's issue. It went to DFI, they weren't yours. We're trying in the process of trying to get it adopted now, and that so as I say, I know you are kind of getting a bit of a bad touch in that one. I would concur, to be fair, with issues that Councillor Edwards raised it about reporting a fault and it coming off the system, and then you're reporting it again because it's not been fixed, and again, there was a couple of those, and again there was issues there. A prime example there is Kiln Park in the village of Kiln there. Those were day burners. They're still day burners, and again, it wasn't those heads weren't long replaced to the LED lights, and now I see there's brand new columns up beside them. So I don't know, are those heads going to be able to be reused, which would only be there a little over a year, or what the situation is with that. Another just wee question then on it: how are we getting along now with the transfer from to the LED lights? Because there were in some of the settlements there were still the odd orange light about there, rather than to the LEDs. Are we close to getting that completed? Let me just see here. Light fixed. On it, one wee question there as well. The like of these lights that were historically that were placed on the telegraph poles, who are responsible for them? As where I'm coming from there, I'd reported lights out wherever I found them, as the man says, that have been once and anywhere I was reporting lights there in Antrim there one day, and just if I happened to be somewhere, I got in that habit of doing it. But I was coming down through Crana, and I reported lights in Crana, and thankfully now I was passed through Crana again a fortnight later, and the majority of the lights I reported out were repaired. I will give you credit in that regard. But there is the odd light whereby it's an old light sitting on a telegraph pole, and there may well be another street light not far from it, and maybe it has been effectively decommissioned. I'm just wondering, is that a thing that's just left there, or is it a thing that DFI are responsible for to remove that light if that light is no longer a functioning light? Or is that, because then whenever I went past it, I says, is that a light out, or is that a light that is no longer active? Because there was another street light effectively on the opposite side of the road, not massively far away from it. So just for my own benefit there, and that one. And then just touching on the website, and again, we do use it as many other councillors have raised about using it there, but it's just making sure that it's up to date. I know I had the issue Orchard Road in Staban. I know it's fixed, but I'm using it as an example. There were the footpath and the lights must have been extended, but yet it maybe only went coming out of Staban, maybe only went to number 22, but yet there was lights up to number 26. They weren't on the website. So again, there are the odd wee example in that one whereby DFI have made improvements and extended the lighting, but yet they're not on they haven't been updated on the computer system to be reported when there is a fault. So I think that's, to be fair, all the other points, to be fair, have been raised by my fellow councillors. But no, as I say, I am contented. There is an improvement on it, definitely from I first came on. There definitely has been improvement, but again, it can be a wee bit piecemeal sometimes there, and to get an individual lights repaired in the rural area. But no, thank you very much for your report and for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerrigan. I'll try and deal with a couple of the issues that you raised there. Yep, I take your point about Ashley Court, about areas that are not adopted and us getting a bit of bad flack. That does happen from time to time, and yep, people think all lights are our responsibility when really they're not. The majority of them are, of course. Kiln Park, well, there was a fault in Kiln Park, which is probably the reason why the lights are burning, and I know there's been a start made on a replacement scheme. So it's with the contractor, so they'll probably be burning in the meantime until he gets rest of the work completed, and the plan would be certainly to reuse the heads. The heads are still good. You know, the heads will not be going to loss. The LED changeover, yeah, as I said, we're about 50% of the way through the LED changeover. And another wee thing that I admitted there when I was going through my talk was the planned rollout of the program. And the way we planned that was to do the sort of the main roads first, then do the old sodium lighting, the old orange, deep orange ones as I would call them, and then the more yellow sodium, the higher pressure sodium lights at the end. And of course, all best plans fall on rocks at times. And we had a bombshell in that one of the main manufacturers, or the only manufacturer of those tubes, as we call them, the long sodium tubes, they were stopping manufacturing in July of 2020. So we had to do a U-turn. Say our first approach was to do the main roads. There was two reasons for that. A was that Joe Public will very seldom report light out on a road. He's more likely to do it outside his front door. And the other one was energy savings. The bigger wattages we would make, the better energy savings. So it was a matter of getting as much energy savings under our belt as we could. But say we had to do a U-turn then and concentrate on the mainly residential, on removing those old deep orange ones, as I call them, the low pressure sodium lights. As we talk, those should be completed or virtually completed. There may be an odd one here and there missed. They should all be changed out at this stage, and then we'll be moving on. Probably backler roads again, but it may be a mixed match between the roads and the other discharge lighting within the mainly again residential areas. Lights on poles, yeah, that's an interesting one, but certainly if there's a new street light adjacent, then my guess would be that's a removal. And it does happen from time to time, lights, because what's required for that light to be removed, it's live working. We can do it, our contractors can do it, but they probably would have had a single electrician out on his own doing the new work, putting on the new heads, connecting all up. He needs to be mated by a first aider to do that disconnection. It's deemed live work on the electricity poles. It's probably just been overlooked, in all honesty. That's what it sounds like anyway. Lights not on the system. Sounds like our slip up as well. Again, as stuff goes on, it should be added. It should be put onto our database, which puts it onto the system. So you've picked up a weakness there by the sound of things, or a slip up. So thanks for that, and more to keep our eye on, really. Thanks again, Councillor.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and I will be brief because the issues that I was going to raise have been well covered, and I'd like to thank Harry and Martin for their presentation today. And Martin, I know I have been in contact with you about a number of these issues, particularly around Sandbank Colleges. So my issue is around the removal of lighting and back lanes and unadopted roads. So it's well covered at this stage, but it would be remiss of me not to comment on it when I had your head tortured about it over the course of the past year. I'm still not content, I will say, but I think that we have, as a council area, we have been very clear in terms of our dissatisfaction with the policy and how we take it forward. In terms of, I mean, in my own DEA, there is the Sandbank Colleges area issue, Colin Lane, Aillickmore, where an elderly woman had a bad fall. There's a lane in Lisclune as well, which is a direct path to the new community centre. So there's a number of issues there that we as a local community safety team have been in communication with yourselves about. As a PCSP, I sit on that as well. In terms of Sandbank Colleges, we have been able to get a number of the residents there sensor lights, which they have been grateful for, but it's no substitution for the light that has been taken away and the safety that they felt having that light there. So as a PCSP, we have written to the department as well, expressing our concern that the PCSP has been put under a financial burden as well to try and address some of these issues, and that people aren't feeling that confidence that they are safe within their own communities. Look, I don't want to labour at home anymore. You're well aware of how we feel about it, and I think that it has been raised with previous ministers, and I know that, but I think over the past wee while we have seen an increase in the removal of light columns, and I think it has become more to the fore. So I certainly would be continuing to raise it with whoever comes into that post in the future, and if we get an executive up and running, which I would be hopeful for, I think it's something that we do definitely need to look at to ensure that people feel safe within their community. So look, Martin, I just want to thank you, because it would have been remiss of me not to speak at this meeting when I have raised the issues with yourself. But thank you for your correspondence in relation to them, and hopefully we do find some sort of resolution. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for your kind words. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Martin and Harry. I think this has been really helpful for everybody, having you in. Thanks for your contribution so far. Again, I'm going to be brief as well. Just I think everything has more or less been covered, but you know, I think on the point of the removal of street lighting as well, I just have to comment that I find it very interesting that you know, a street light can be removed due to vandalism of the street light, yet for back laneways, if there's vandalism occurs on people's homes, then like there's no action taken with regards to streetlights, or if the safety of a streetlight is at risk, it's removed and action's taken. Whereas if the safety of a resident is at risk because of that poor lighting, then again no action is taken. So I look forward to the next whoever's taken over the DFI ministry, and hopefully we can actually change the policy on this, because you know, it's not really working the way it is right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, I'm going to allow Alderman Hussey back in briefly. He just wants to raise one further point.
It will be quick, Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity. Street lighting in car parks was formerly DFI. It is now switched to council responsibility. And reporting of outages, obviously they're now off the online system. Is there any way that DFI could liaise with council officers as to the future reporting of those lights, whereby maybe if they remain on the system and an outage is reported via your system, you then transfer that to council for repair? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor, it's certainly not one that has been raised before. I'm sure something that we can look at. I would have thought, you know, that if, I suppose, not everybody understands that lighting in the car parks is now a function of the council that have been used with them being under our remit. I think they've all got a prefix C on the number, but that probably doesn't mean an awful lot. It would just mean that if somebody's talking to our reporting system, they would know to tell them to go to yourselves, you know, to the council. But yeah, no, we'll have a look at that and see if there's anything can be arranged along those lines.
Yeah, Chair, I think councillors know it, but the general public doesn't when it comes to using the online system, which is the issue. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, councillors, that's everybody. So as chair of the committee, just first of all, in a councillor capacity, I'm not going to go over the issues that have been raised by members previously. I think they've covered those adequately. Just to say that I welcome the move from the old sodium lights to the LED lights. I think they're far more uplifting, I suppose. The old sodium lights to me were very dreary and depressing, but the new LED lights, I think, they're far more, as I say, positive looking, and you know, you can see the colours of things and the town that you live in and things like that, you know, so totally welcome that. And just to say, in a personal capacity, to thank Martin and Harry for their cooperation on street lighting issues with me personally. As chair of the committee, members, I think that listening to members' queries, the main issue arising out of this today is obviously the current policy on the removal or non-replacement of back street lighting. So I think it would be prudent for us to write a letter to the DFI minister, whoever that may be in the future, just outlining those concerns and maybe asking that the minister could reflect on that policy. So That brings that part of our meeting to a conclusion, members. So just to say thanks again to both Harry and Martin for coming here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, that brings us to our next item. Item 6 is Chair's business, and the only thing I want to say is just that I'm conscious that a couple of our members had recently stood in the Stormont elections, Rachel and Brian Tierney, and we also had Darren Guy on the line earlier. He's not a member of the committee, but I just want to acknowledge their participation in that election and to say congratulations on taking part in it, although they weren't successful. Certainly I do think anybody who puts themselves before the electorate, especially a Stormont Assembly, deserves every credit, so well done on that. Our next item then, members, is item 7. Sorry, not Darren Guy, Ryan McCready. Our next item then, members, is Chairperson's business, which I've just covered. So our next item is item 7, matters arising from the open minutes of the Environment and Regeneration Committee held on Wednesday the 13th, 2022, pages 17 to 30. Any matters arising? Alderman Hussey, ER 92.
Thank you, Chair. This one is with regard to dumping in general, not specifically to Maherboy, if you allow me. It may be of interest to yourself, indeed. Could I ask council officers, you'll understand why I'm asking this question later, Chair. Could I ask council officers, what arrangements were there in place for the reopening of Spam and Dump? When were these arrangements curtailed or stopped? I'd like to come back when I get an answer to that. I think I know the answer, but I'd like to come back.
Yeah, Chair, I'm not sure just exactly what you're referring to, Alderman Hussey. The arrangements for Spamount were the same as for every other facility. You know, they were opened as per you know, what had been agreed previously, but if you can provide me the detail, I can certainly look into it for you.
Yeah, it's Chair, you'll be interested in this as well. I was aware of a Facebook piece during the election last Thursday where a councillor claimed that responsibility for stopping the reopening of Spam and Dump. I wasn't aware that it was to be reopened at all. So I suppose, you know, it's a strange statement to make when there was never any intention that Spam and Dump would be reopened. Perhaps being economical with the truth is a phrase that could be used. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Chair, happy to clarify that. When people refer to recycling centres, they're colloquially referred to as dumps. So we hear about Pennyburn dump, Strathfoyle dump. So it's a term used for a recycling centre, and I think it's probably in that context that the statement was made. But again, I'm not aware of it. But if you provide me with the details, I'll be more than happy to look into it. But I think it's just that recycling centres are referred to as dumps.
Okay, members, no other items under information being raised with me, so we'll move on then to item 8, which is the annual service plan, and Karen's taking this one first.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, Chair, the purpose of the report is to seek members' approval to adopt our service plan for 22-23 for the Directorate and to consider some of the outcomes and achievements during 21-22. Members will be aware that councils are subjected to a statutory performance improvement regime, and our service plan forms part of that. Members, in section 2 of your report, we have outlined the various services that are covered within the Directorate, and indeed the summary of resources. Members, the service plan that's attached to your report today outlines some of the achievements from 21-22 and the improvement objectives and improvement plan and measures of success proposed for 22-23. Members, just to remind you, as you need probably no reminding, that the provision of services during the pandemic and the wider rise in construction inflation, cost of living, etc., has been challenging over the last couple of years. And members, we have provided for your information in the cover report a number of specific achievements during 21-22, which are outlined in section 3.2 of your report, and they cover our environment section, capital development and building control, our regeneration section, and indeed our planning section. Members, in addition to provision of services across the directorates, in the following year we will focus on a number of key activities and actions in order to achieve our improvement objectives, that we will protect and enhance the environment through creating and supporting a culture of environmental stewardship. And in section 3.4 of your report, we have pulled out a few of the issues that we will be dealing with in this current financial year. However, members, the service plan highlights in detail some of the further actions that we will be taking, and that is, as we are aware, in addition to our normal day-to-day services across the directorate. So, members, in terms of implications, the Directorate does strive to provide balanced services across the district, meet the needs of rural communities, and indeed that the projects are designed to contribute towards the corporate objectives around tackling climate emergency. And members, just to remind you that the Directorate has a net revenue budget of for £26.5 million, which is approximately 40% of Council's overall budget. And indeed, we have 411 officers, which again is in and around 40% of the overall staff of Council. And members, if I can just take this opportunity to thank all of those officers for their contribution over the last year. It has been challenging, and they have all contributed towards the achievements that we have made, and I look forward to working with them and indeed with elected members in the year to come. I'm happy to take any questions that members have, and indeed I again in the recommendations we're asking that members adopt the service plan for the year ahead.
Thank you, Karen, and just to echo your own words there, and thanking indeed yourself and the entire staff of this directorate for their work through the previous year, through some very, very challenging times, I have to say as well, so thank you. We have indicated here Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and I welcome the report coming here in front of us today. And I have to just want to put the DEP's comments on record that we want to thank Karen and her team and the whole directorate for the great work that they have carried out this last 2 years under very, very difficult issues and times with COVID. And look, I have no problem in proposing the recommendation here when we see the report here as looking at work that's going to be done and enhancing the council area in a number of places. But Chair, just happy to propose and once again thank Karen and the team for the the great work they've done over this last couple of years. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Morris. Councillor Dobbins, go ahead, Angela.
Thank you, Chair. And Chair, just to echo yourself and the previous speaker's sentiment with regard to Karen and Connor and the staff, especially over the last number of years, we're coming out of one side of COVID and we don't know what's ahead of us still. But I have to say that regardless of the challenges that were put up in front of them, this city actually really did look beautiful. And you know, it was a pleasure, and the time that we had, where we weren't able to get out, you know, and go for walks by ourselves, that we were still looking at beauty. And now, even more so now, now that everybody is back out there again, yeah, the challenges that were put up were met head on, and I'm happy to second the proposal by Alderman Devaney. Also, Chair, I realise that this is your last meeting, and I would like to commend yourself as well as being fair and unbiased as a chair, as your role in chair. So therefore, a good luck.
Thank you, Councillor Dobbins, much appreciated. Our next councillor is Councillor Logue.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. I'm not part of this committee. But however, first of all, I would just like to reiterate what other councillors have said in regard to the directorate. During COVID, a lot of the employees there had to carry on in very difficult circumstances. So I just want to, on behalf of our party, thank them for that. And Karen, there is a lot of good work in the service plan. And I really don't want to take away from it, but I really need to ask. There's a couple of missions for me which I would need to see included within that service plan. The first one would be the lighting of the foil embankment. I think it was to be tied in. Now, maybe I'm missing it, but I've went over twice and can't see it. Maybe I think it was to be tied in with Bay Road. If you could maybe check that for me. The second one that's not there is the notice of motion that I brought in regarding the redevelopment of the Foyle Valley Gateway. Maybe that hasn't been assigned yet, so if you could maybe just give me an update on that. And also a bit of concern of something that is on there, and that is the urban villages, the public realm scheme. I see that they're saying it's up to date, and the plan is there. We do have there was a few urban village meetings cancelled, but I do have one shortly, and I know I'd email yourself on it. But I would not now, but I would certainly like an update as to just where that project is, because there is a lot of money available to it, and I would just be afraid that council could lose that money, and nobody wants to see that happening. So I would be very grateful if I could get a detailed report just as to where that project is. And I say not now, it would take up too much time, but if I could get the inclusion of those two projects, or an update at least, and a further update by email on the urban village public realm. Thank you.
Yep. Through you, Chair. Members, thank you so far for your comments in relation to the service plan. And just to reassure members, the service plan is not a definitive list of everything that the officers will be doing over the following year. It would be, to be perfectly honest, quite impossible to include every single project that we are working on scoping up. So what we have tried to do is to consider a range of projects to show progress and to show, I suppose, our achievements that we intend to have for the year ahead. However, not every single project and every single milestone is included within the service plan. However, just to reassure members that, you know, certainly the projects that you have mentioned in particular, Councillor Logue, in terms of the lighting in Foyle Embankment and Bay Road, and indeed the Foyle Valley master plan and the urban villages projects. They are projects that the team are working on, and we will intend to progress them this year. And clearly, So just to reassure you on that point, and we can note that absolutely, and more than happy to provide a detailed update in relation to the Urban Villages project. I know we have been engaging in detailed conversations with CEO on that with a view to try and see how we can have as positive a way forward as we possibly can on that, but happy to carry out an update or to update you on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again, Chair, for letting me in.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair, and I just want to put on record my party's huge thanks to Karen and all the officers within the Directorate. I know it is an absolutely mammoth Directorate with lots of different projects going on, and I think it is a credit to you all, the officers team, the amount of work that we have actually got through on this plan, the amount of projects that are coming to hopefully completion, like the Strathfield Greenway, you know, the pontoon. Anytime I've ever had any suggestions at all, they've always been taken on board, and I've always felt heard whenever dealing with everybody within the Directorate. So I just wanted to put a huge thanks from myself and my party for everybody who's worked extremely hard, not just over the last 2 years, but since I've joined here in Council in 2019. I mean, it is amazing the amount of work that is actually done within this Directorate and other Directorates, but a huge thanks to Karen and the team. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Rachel. Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Karen and the whole team for putting all this together, because as Rachel said there, it's a massive task, and I think like everybody here has a real passion for environment and regeneration and for the work that's done, and I think it's great to see such ambition for the year ahead. I think I suppose like Councillor Logue, there's a few things that I kind of didn't see in there, and with regards to environment and regeneration, and I think I know that you can't include everything, Karen, definitely not. I think one of the just something that's kind of key to kind of what we do is around environmental protection and supporting biodiversity as well. And I know that we're doing very good work on that front, and I think that could be mentioned within the plan. But I think with regards to the zero waste circular economy strategy also, I see there kind of on page 3 that it's mentioned, but within the delivery, I'm not really seeing the actions that are related to the implementation of the strategy within the plan. And so I'm just wondering, is that one of the things that's not included but is being done? And I suppose there's in the target outcomes for 2022-23, like there's 4 there. One of them says an increase in the percentage of household waste recycled and composted. But I suppose given our commitment to the circular economy, would it be right to have an increase in the percentage of household, so not only an increase in the percentage, but an increase in the quality, an improvement in the quality of the household waste recycled and composted? So I think that's like just an important word that's maybe missing from those 4 target outcomes for 22-23. And I suppose the other thing that I'm just wondering about for the year ahead is around Craig and Country Park. I know there's been again work that's been done around the reservoir and the implications that has for progressing the cycle path around the Pennyburn. So yeah, so I just have those questions, but I think like it's obviously a massive bit of work. We have such massive passion for environment and regeneration, but I just wanted to check specifically around the zero waste circular economy strategy, given the massive piece of the pie that waste and recycling services has in terms of the energies that this department puts in. Thanks. And just sorry, as a declaration of interest, I'm a member of Zero Waste Northwest.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, members, again, just to reassure members in terms of the issues, I suppose, that Councillor O'Neill has raised. Certainly our biodiversity strategy, we've mentioned, I suppose, continuing to implement that within the service plan, and indeed the zero waste circular economy strategy. I think, members, what we have tried to do over the years, and certainly happy to change that should members wish, is to bring detailed reports to members throughout the year, outlining how we are actually implementing these various strategies. I know we have brought in reports in terms of the zero waste circular economy strategy, and indeed our biodiversity and green infrastructure strategies. Certainly, again, in Craig and Country Park, we've had a number of reports specifically on that, and again, work is very active, ongoing on that. I've had a number of meetings in the last couple of weeks with officers, and indeed we've had meetings with Craig and Country Park around that. So again, members, I think it's sometimes difficult to include absolutely everything. We would be war and peace, I think, at the stage with the service plan. It really is, believe it or not, probably one of the most difficult tasks of the year is actually pulling together the service plan from all the different services and actually putting it together and knowing what to include and what to leave out, you know, so that it's meaningful. It marks the progress, but it's not, you know, hugely cumbersome for members to work through. So we try to get a balance, and indeed, in addition to that, bring in reports to members on specific issues as we go through the year, which I would propose that we continue to do, so that members do have that regular reassurance on the adoption of the various strategies that we have brought to you and you have adopted over the last number of years. So again, happy to take any requests for particular updates as we go forward as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Karen. And just for the record, Councillor Kelly had declared a non-pecuniary interest as a member of the North West Regional Waste Management Group as well. Our next councillor is Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I say thank you to Karen and all of the officers and staff in the department for the production, not alone of the annual service plan, but for the openness that we receive as elected representatives from our officers. You know, Karen, Connor, name anyone in the department, they're always in the end of the phone. And as elected representative, I certainly appreciate that accessibility within what is an extremely important department within council. We have an action plan, and I suppose there's a tremendous amount of juggling of the desires of 40 councillors in the chamber, not to mention community desires that come through to the department. And there's no doubt the action plan exhibits a massive degree of ambition, and that is to be welcomed. However, earlier today, information provided to councillors re financial pressures that have emerged, should it be post-COVID, should it be pay claims, etc., are going to have an impact on what we can actually achieve. And within that, priority must, of course, be given to our statutory responsibilities. Is it fair to say that the action plan is very much a fluid document as we move forward, and that there will be items in the action plan that prove extremely challenging to the point that they may need to be postponed until a future date as we move forward? I think you know the answer to that, and we all do, but I would hope that we can maintain as much as possible within that action plan going forward. But we have to recognise the reality of the pressures that face us moving forward into this new council year. As we do move into a new council year, can I very briefly thank yourself, Chair, for your chairing of this committee. But there again, I would expect nothing better or nothing better than that from a fellow Derg councillor. You've done an excellent job, and that is to be welcomed. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair, and members, clearly we are, as a council, facing huge challenges, and certainly what we have tried to do is to be as realistic as we possibly can on the service plan in terms of what we can achieve. So certainly our ambition is great. We, as you know, members, work tirelessly to not only sort of work with finances within council, but also to look at every possible funding opportunity, you know, both from, I suppose, regional government, national government, Europe, etc. All of those discussions and all of those funding strategies are currently ongoing, and certainly we will do whatever we can with the professional team of officers that we have in order to achieve the ambitions as laid out by members. Clearly, we will have to reflect on challenges as they come along, and we may well have to come back to members with suggestions for changes. Hopefully that won't be the case, and we will be able to achieve everything that we at this stage set out to do for the year ahead. However, we will keep members up to date as we move along throughout the year. But thank you for your comments, members.
Thank you, Derek, for those comments as well. Our next speaker is Councillor Jackson.
Good Chair, and I know Councillor Logue has given our party's endorsement for the service plan, but I think it's important just to come on to reinforce the point that for this directorate, and we've heard every year when the service plan's presented, it's highlighted the vast range of services that this directorate provide, and the sheer scale of public facing services that essential services that's provided by this directorate. But as we look over the last number of years, there's many from within this directorate stepped forward whenever others stayed at home. They stepped forward, they ensure that services continue to be provided within our district, and that's worth recognizing at this point. And not only did they step forward, a lot of people within this directorate actually adopted their roles, changed their way of working to ensure that essential services continued, and that's to be congratulated and commended. But one of the things that we've seen over particularly the last number of weeks is the massive impact whenever these services aren't being provided, and I'm referring to the industrial action that had taken place, and it shows how much as communities, as members of the public, we rely on the services that are provided by this directorate. And I just didn't want the opportunity to pass without making a comment around that we are full appreciation for everybody who plays a role within council, but particularly this directorate, because we've seen the results whenever there's gaps in services and the damage it's caused. So on behalf of Sinn Féin, I just want to reiterate and reinforce our support for the service plan going forward and the directorate as a whole. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Members, the recommendations of the report have been proposed and seconded there, and your comments have been noted by Karen. So members, I'm taking that as unanimously endorsed, which will take us then to our next item, which is item 9, and that's the proposed DFI works at Melvin Arena to address flooding. And Karen's taking this one.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, Chair, the purpose of the report is to provide members with further details around an approach made to Council by DFI in relation to their ongoing efforts to address a flooding problem at the Ballycolman estate in Strabane, and to seek your permission to enable them to install short-term drainage infrastructure works within Council's Melvin Arena grounds, and to seek permission from members to enter into a legal agreement to permit the department to execute the proposed works on site and inspect and maintain the infrastructure moving forward. Members, you will recall this item was presented to you in November, and in terms of I suppose the department's short-term solution to floods in Ballycolman, and indeed the feedback from DFI. You will recall that Harry from DFI spoke to members and took questions with the Divisional Roads Manager at the time, looking at both a short-term and a longer-term solution to the issues within the area that have affected residents. So members, in terms of the key issues, as requested by members in November, officers have had a number of meetings with officials from DFI and their design consultants to understand the nature and any implications of these works on council land. DFI Roads have looked at a number of options in that regard, and they have also been able to satisfactorily answer technical, operational and safety concerns that were raised by our officers, and indeed the issue of clear up of any fluvial matter following a flood should it occur. And they also have confirmed, as members requested, that the long-term permanent drainage solution is a high priority for the department. So members, again, we don't believe there are any financial implications for council associated with the implementation of these works. However, we would need to enter into a legal agreement in order to protect council's interests in terms of the department accepting full liability for compensating council for any damage or loss of use of arena facilities should this situation arise. So members, we are recommending here today that we seek to give permission to DFI's Roads to install their short-term drainage solution, and indeed that we enter into a legal agreement with them to execute the proposed works on site. I'm happy to take any comments that members have and the proposal if possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Karen. First indicated is Councillor Edwards.
Chair, thanks for letting me in, and I thank Karen for the update as well. And as people on this meeting are aware that this is an ongoing issue for Ballycolman down at the very lower end, and it's great to see that work is developing to deal with the flooding problem. And there I've been down there, I've been in multiple homes and speaking to homeowners down there, and they're always terrified that floodings will again ruin their property. I just wanted to ask Karen, what level of disruption will there be to the facilities there in order to run on track there and sports pitches? So that's the first thing. And secondly, Chair, I just want to ask how long this work will take as well. And yeah, Chair, that's the two questions. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, I don't have Frank or Jerry Quinn or structural engineers here in the chamber today, but my understanding is in terms of the level of disruption, the modelling shows that would actually mainly in a sort of relatively severe but not the worst possible outcome be relatively limited in timescale, and we've been advised relatively quick to clear, and so we are assured on that matter from the department. I'm not actually sure, members, how long the works will take. We can certainly email that information out to members in order that you're aware of that before full council. I'm not led to believe that it would be very substantial and long-term works. At this stage is a short-term solution that the department want to put into place, but certainly I will ensure that detail is emailed out to members as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I wonder if I could just come back in there on that. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Karen, if there's any, if the running track or pitches have to be lifted or digging or whatever, so that I imagine the legal agreement will cover that DFA will be responsible for fixing that again, if that's the case. Karen, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and sorry, through you, Chair, members, just to advise members that in this short-term phase 1, the works aren't actually within the arena, etc. So we don't envisage any disruption during the works actually within the facilities as such, but we can send out a detailed update to members in terms of that.
Okay, thanks for that. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And look, I have no problem in supporting the recommendation coming forward here. As we all know, this has been a historical issue, and it's good to see there is some movement on it. And I do take on board what Karen has said, that look, the long term is a priority, and that needs to be a priority. I think the previous speaker really asked the question, around the disruption to the facilities and the timescale. And look, maybe when Karen finds out about the timescale, she can come back to members of the committee. But Chair, I am very, very happy to propose it. The recommendation here, I don't think it was proposed by the previous speaker. Happy to propose it. And just when I'm on, Chair, can I just congratulate you on your year as Chair of the committee? You have been very fair, and many times ringing you up to come in under Chair's business. But once again, well done in your year as Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris. Our next speaker is Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and reiterating some of the remarks there, reference the works from Councillor Edwards and Alderman Devaney. It would be good to know what short-term, the definition of short-term, and I'm sure there are concerns at the users of the actual stadia, the pitches, whether it's the Intermediate League male team or indeed Science Whips ladies team, both progressing extremely well within their own particular spheres. Has there been any engagement with the users of the particular pitches to allay any fears? I welcome the assurances that we're hearing, both from within council and indeed from the department, but has there been any engagement with the club users just to allay any fears that they may have? Thank you. I'm happy to second the proposal, by the way.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, I think there has been extensive engagement with our Health and Communities team, who we believe have been engaging with users, but I will double check on that and make sure that is certainly undertaken as soon as possible. Certainly my understanding from the feedback from the team is that, they don't anticipate that this would happen very often. Indeed, there has been a number of incidents of heavy rain over the last number of months where you know, the modelling would have shown that it wouldn't necessarily have affected the facilities, and indeed that they are likely to recover fairly quickly. So again, then they would come in after the floodwaters recede, and then they would clear up the pitches, and they believe that that would be relatively straightforward. Again, in terms of engagement with the users, I will certainly make sure that that's something that is undertaken by our Health and Communities Directorate, but certainly following on from members' consideration of this and indeed our internal consideration, we've had very extensive engagement with our Health and Communities team who manage the facilities in order to ensure that they are assured on operational issues in relation to this proposal, which members at this stage they are. So thank you, Chair.
Appreciate it, Karen. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dan Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose given that the short-term proposal is effectively reprofiling the roads and throwing the water into the council property via an open drain, I have a latent concern. It's a small concern, but given that officers are content that there will be no structural damage or safety issues will occur, then I think we do have a duty in that instance to assist the people whose homes are being flooded. Can I just ask, Karen, you've addressed the issue around loss of income. I suppose I'm a little bit concerned that the legal agreement would have some sort of finality arrangement or some sort of sunset clause that would stop, you know, the short-term proposal that water would stop being thrown generally from the road into the facility as soon as the long-term solution would be operational. So just if you could give me that assurance, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, we can certainly make sure that that is included. I presume it will be, but if it's not, we will make sure that that is the case. As you can see from the report, DFI have indicated that the department are hoping to have a scheme, the long-term scheme, ready for tender by April 23. That's subject again to finances being made available, but they have advised us that this is a high priority for the department. So certainly we will ensure that that's included as we move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And members, that is the last of our speakers on that item. It has been proposed there by Councillor Devaney, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Members, only take that as read, or sorry, as unanimous. Members, our next items 10 to 14 are for information, unless a councillor wishes to raise any item within it. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Councillor O'Neill, item 11, 12 and 14.
Thanks, Sophie. I'm not the only one raising things here. So yeah, no, just under item 11, the Ipcc report. I found that report from council on it was really helpful. So thanks for doing it, first of all. I think like this report has been kind of described as the now or never report, which is really showing that only radical action can avert climate disaster. And I think it calls for sectoral action. That's it happened within the report that you have done there, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for this radical action that council can potentially lead on, but we definitely need Stormont to do so much more. And I think like this is definitely the starkest of all the reports that the Ipcc have done so far, with a saying that we really need to like turn that corner from 2025. But it also spells out to me just how poor Stormont's climate response has been so far. Particularly, when we look at the climate crisis and the context of the cost of living crisis, there is so much opportunity for change and for radical action that's actually going to support and help people. Really investing in renewable energy, in which Stormont has put no money into for the last 5 years. The mass retrofitting of homes, again, that would make a massive impact in terms of fuel poverty. It also makes a massive impact when it comes to energy efficiency and greenhouse gas emissions. And again, nothing has been done on this coming from Stormont. So I think I just wanted to highlight it because we cannot talk about the climate crisis enough. I think the Ipcc report and the work that they do is essential and excellent in keeping the urgency of the climate crisis very much to the fore of our minds. And the fact that business as usual is really not good enough. We've known about the crisis that we've been in for far too long. We really need a step change in what we're doing. And I know in council we understand that, but I think we really do need to look more at what radical action that we can take. So that's all I want to say on that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Maeve. Item 12 then.
Yeah, so my boy, I just wanted to note from the my boy update there that the criminal trial has been postponed again. Now it's going to be in September, and like I'm actually not sure how many times now the criminal trial has been postponed. If anybody can tell me, that would be great. But yeah, I just want to express my disappointment that that this has been dragged out for longer, because without the criminal trial being done, then we're being held back from the other action that we need to do around my boy. And hopefully with the new executive, the public inquiry on waste crime will be back on the table. That's all on that.
Through you, Chair, members, just to advise members, in terms of, if you recall, the committee had suggested visiting the Kurdistown remediation project in County Kildare, and that is in the process of being organised. And members, we would welcome nominations from members in terms of that. But if members, we will send out an email to you in relation to that, and hopefully you can come back to us on that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill, item 14.
Thanks, Chair. And before I forget, Chair, thank you as well for being a good chair all year as well. It's been a good experience to be on this committee with yourself chairing it, so thanks a million. So yeah, thank you so much for this report. I found it actually a little shocking what's happened here around our residual waste, and particularly like I actually wasn't aware that like so much of our residual waste was going to energy from waste. And I see energy from waste, and I think when it comes to others in the zero waste circular economy movement, they see energy from waste as another form of incineration. And I think that it's kind of outrageous, to be honest, that Riveridge don't have a recording system to record incineration. Like, I think we should write to them and say that they need to amend their recorded template to include waste incineration for transparency. Because if we're saying that incineration is not happening because it's not being recorded, then it's really not good enough when it comes to transparency and how our waste is being managed. So I think I don't know, could we propose to write to Riveridge to include waste incineration within the recording templates? I think when it comes to the waste incineration and the fact that this process is still happening, waste incineration it's a carbon intensive process, and it really undermines efforts to decrease carbon emissions. Like your energy from waste facilities, it's actually dirtier in terms of greenhouse gas emissions than a coal burning power station, and it's really not the way forward. And in the context of that, I would question the assertion in 4.1 that there's no climate change issues with regards to this report, because I do think it has a significant impact when it comes to our assessment on it with in terms of climate change. The other thing I just wanted to ask around it, we're getting these figures in terms of percentages of residual waste, but I'm just wondering, you know, since we became a zero waste city region, has the tonnage of waste leaving council increased or decreased? And you know, is it possible when getting figures on this, could it be done in tonnages as well as percentages, just so we can, you know, fully understand you know, like the quantities of waste? And the final thing I just wanted to propose, Dr. Andy Rees from the Welsh Government there, he recently presented at the Northern Ireland Reuse Networks Conference, which happened in Derry there a few months ago in the Playhouse. And you know, Wales have become the third best in the world when it comes to recycling. They're really leading in this game now, and they're also trying out innovative ways to manage the residual waste and to reduce the residual waste, which is really important as we, you know, face the climate crisis and our waste crisis. And you know, I wanted to propose, you know, on the back of this, given that, you know, this is the sort of you know, this is where we're at, you know, when it comes to waste management, but in terms of moving forward and how, you know, we can't change kind of what currently is happening, you know, what has happened in terms of that waste being incinerated. But in terms of moving forward, I thought it might be beneficial for the committee to invite Dr. Andy Rees from the Welsh Government just to present on what they're doing in terms of their recycling, how they became third best in the world, but also and what they're doing with regards to residual waste. So I thought that might be helpful for this committee. I can put that proposal in the chat box.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Councillor O'Neill. Members, just in the meantime, while Councillor O'Neill's putting that into the box, is there any other member who wishes to raise any issue on their items for information before we would move on?
Chair, just one comment. Why invite a representative of the third best? Who's the first best?
Yeah, point well made. I'm going to ask Karen to come on here just at the minute.
Yeah, Chair, just to clarify a couple of things really, I suppose, just firstly, in terms of the template that Councillor O'Neill had requested we write to Riverage in relation to, that's actually a DERA template. It's not related specifically to Riverage. So just for members' information, and certainly in terms of the waste figures, members, they are all, as you will know, publicly available. However, we will bring a report into members in order to so that members have that for their information at the next committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Karen. And Councillor O'Neill has it in the chat box there that Council will invite Andy Rees from the Welsh Government, who have become the third best country in the world in recycling and are developing innovative strategies in reducing and dealing with residual waste. That has been seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Members,
if you need me to answer, Alderman Hussey, just around that Wales are actually the best in Europe. I'm actually not sure of who globally is 1 and 2, but they're not within Europe, and they have more a comparative system and set up to ourselves, particularly when it you know, we've come from the EU waste legislation, so it's much more comparative.
Alderman Hussey.
Yeah, Chair, I put in the chat box there. Thank Councillor O'Neill for that explanation.
Okay, members, been proposed and seconded and not sensing any objection to it. So, members, that brings us to the end of our open business. So just before we go on to seal, I would just like to thank members for their kind comments there, and just to thank Karen, Connor and the rest of our staff for their I suppose keeping me right during the year as chair of this committee, and to the admin staff as well for keeping me right. And I want to thank my vice chair as well, the Alderman Kerrigan. I didn't have to call him too often, but I knew that if I did need him, that he was there. And members, last but not least, just to thank each and every one of you for your contribution to all the issues throughout the previous year. Very positive contribution in terms of debate and the work that was carried out throughout the year. So thank you, members. Members will now move on to seal. So could I have a proposer and seconder, please, to go on the seal?
So proposed, Alderman Devaney, to go on to confidential.
Proposed by Alderman Devaney and seconded by